I'm going to go ahead and record this session. You're going to see a prompt appear on your screen. If you just choose the option to continue, you remain a participant of the session. Here we go.
Recording in progress.
All right, well, that being said, again, thank you so much for joining me in today's webinar. Again, my name is Ricardo. I am part of Zoom's customer marketing team. Let's get into the agenda. I want to make sure that you have a good understanding of what we're going to be covering in this respective webinar. We're going to cover the desktop application, what is technically called Zoom Client for Meetings. I'll roll through a couple of slides here to show you what that client can do for you. So from there, we'll go into discussion about Zoom Meetings, Zoom Video Webinar, which is what we're using in today's session. We'll talk about Zoom Rooms, Zoom Phone, Zoom Chat, and finally, we'll close out with our app marketplace, show you what's available for you from that aspect of our website, okay? So let's go and get started. I wanna make sure that we maximize our time. When we think about all of the offerings that we're providing within our unified video-first communications platform, it's going to consist of meetings, right? A lot of you are most likely familiar with Zoom Meetings. That is where you can have interactive sessions with your participants. Zoom Meetings contain breakout rooms. If you happen to have a licensed account, you could have polling, registration. You can stream your sessions out to Facebook or YouTube. Ultimately, a Zoom meeting is meant to be highly collaborative, highly interactive. Depending on the type of subscription that you have, you'll be able to, of course, have up to 100 people in those sessions, or sometimes more, depending on the type of subscription that you have, right? The other offering that we are providing, which is what we're in right now, is the webinar environment. Fully featured with everything that, well, I should say some features are not available in Zoom Webinar. For example, breakout rooms is only available in Zoom Meetings, whereas it is not available in the webinar environment. But full featured, very easy to use. I'm using webinars today. You have the ability to, of course, have thousands and thousands of people within a webinar environment. The absolute max that you can have in a Zoom meeting would be 1,000 people. That's considered a large meeting. Of course, that's all dependent on the type of subscription that you have, but ultimately that is the absolute max that you could have in a Zoom meeting, is 1,000 people. Whereas in the webinar environment, you can have almost 50,000 people in one session. Obviously, of course, depending on the type of subscription as well, but nonetheless, that is the absolute max amount of people that you can have in one main webinar environment. Moving on, conference rooms. So we have the ability to have organizations set up conference rooms that are simply Zoom-based. This is what we would call a Zoom room. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we progress throughout the webinar. And of course, Zoom Phone. Some of you might have heard of Zoom Phone. Some of you may not have heard of Zoom Phone. We're not providing the world with actual hardware phones. We're not in that space. We're still providing nothing but software as a service is the term, right? But we provide within the desktop client a phone feature, a full phone feature with the ability to have voicemail, you have texting capabilities, you have the option of course, delegating privileges if you want to have others take calls on your behalf, place a call that you've put on hold and have someone else pick it up. A lot of great things. Everything that we would normally use in a full phone system is available for you in Zoom Phone. And of course, in the desktop client, which we'll get into in just a couple of minutes here, is the ability to chat with your entire organization. We want all organizations that are using Zoom to get that client downloaded and installed. It is free, and that is a great way for all of you to remain in communication and at the same time maximize all the features that are contained within the Zoom client. And then, of course, the app marketplace, where there's a lot of great applications that allow you to streamline your processes throughout the day. So I'll make sure that I provide you with a link in chat to our app marketplace website, so you can take a look and see what is available for you to download and install and remain efficient as you're using our client, okay? So let's get right into some pricing very quickly. Just wanted to show you a screenshot of a pricing page. Naturally, a lot of you happen to have questions with regards to pricing. The best thing for you to do is just visit zoom.us/pricing. And once you're at that website, you can determine what are you interested in subscribing to, right? We're focusing on this screenshot on Zoom Meetings. And there's, of course, a free subscription that you can always obtain. You can have up to 100 people in those sessions. The only detail is, of course, that meeting can only run for 40 minutes and then it will come to a conclusion. But you have unlimited one-to-one meetings. You can record your Zoom meetings. You have a lot of great interactive features that, in a sense, come out of the box, if you will, with Zoom Meetings. Breakout rooms, reactions, the ability to have full collaborative interactive sessions, the ability for your participants to share content in that Zoom meeting with you and have that collaboration take place in the sessions. Of course, you can move over to a paid for subscription where naturally you're going to get a lot more features available for you. But simply put, wanted to have you just take a quick look at our pricing page. Of course, you can view different types of plans. You can go from a billed monthly to an annual pricing structure, change out your currency in case you're not necessarily located within the United States. But simply put, there's a lot of great opportunities here for you to visit and just get a really great understanding of what Zoom is providing to you on a subscription level, okay? Let's get into the Zoom desktop client. I want to talk about this very quickly. As mentioned, it is free. I like the way that I frame the desktop client is we actually use it here at Zoom. This is how we communicate here at Zoom. I'm located in Oakland, California. All of my colleagues are spread out around the world. If they're not here in California, they're most likely in Australia. I have colleagues in the UK. I have colleagues in Germany, Amsterdam, so anywhere around the world. But we're using this client in order for us to remain in communication with each other. And as mentioned, it is free. So all you have to do is go out to zoom.us/download. The current version as I speak is 5.5.5. That is the current version. When you choose this option from the download center, Zoom client for meetings, this is a PC/Mac based version. We also provide you with a mobile version. I certainly have it downloaded and installed onto my cell phone. I'll tell you why as we go through the desktop client. We also provide you with plugins in case you're interested in learning how to schedule meetings and you're wondering, do I have to log into my Zoom account to schedule a meeting? I personally recommend if you're completely new to Zoom meetings, I would start there. I would always start from home base, if you will. Log in your Zoom account, schedule up your Zoom meetings from there. But from the download page of our website, you can see that we also provide plugins. So when you're ready to schedule your Zoom meetings from Outlook or Google Calendar, those are certainly some options that you can download and have installed into your email platforms, right? So let's focus first on the client for meetings. When we get this downloaded and installed onto our system, it's going to be a Zoom icon on our desktop. We click on it, and then it's going to prompt us to sign in. You'll be able to join a meeting, but I prefer that you sign in because you definitely want to be using the application, right? So when I click on sign in, I'll have options in how can I sign in. If I want to just enter my username and password, I can enter that information. That's going to be the username and password that you use to get into your online Zoom account. Or if you're part of an organization, you can sign in using single sign-on options. You can sign in with a Google account, or of course with your Facebook account. But once you log into the application, this is exactly what it's going to look like. So it starts off with home. At home, you have 4 icons. I can start an instant meeting, bypassing the scheduling process. I can join a meeting as a participant, entering the meeting ID and the passcode to get into that session. I can schedule my Zoom meetings from here as well. When I schedule that meeting, it's going to be displayed for me right over here. And of course, since I'm the host of that session, I have the ability to start the meeting. So right away, you can tell that this application provides to me a lot of great options in order for me to remain efficient as I am working through Zoom, right? So I can start my meeting as I've scheduled it. If I've been invited to a meeting as a participant, always know in the invitation is an option for you to add that meeting to your own calendar as a participant. If you do that, you're also going to see that meeting listed for you here. So this is a calendar for you. If you're not the host of that meeting, this button would be labeled join. So whether you're a host of a meeting, you can start it. If you're a participant of a meeting, you can join that meeting. And then last but not least, this option here, share screen, allows you to start an instant meeting as well, much like this option here. You're basically bypassing the scheduling in these scenarios here to get into an instant Zoom meeting, right? This provides you with the ability to share your screen as you start that instant meeting. So why would I want to start an instant meeting? Why do I want to bypass the scheduling process? A lot of people like to practice. They might already have the scheduling process down and they don't prefer to go through the scheduling just to get into a Zoom meeting to practice with a few items. Maybe they want to practice with the delivery of a presentation, or they want to try new features that they haven't worked on or worked with just yet, right? So both of these options allow you to start instant meetings. This just has you share your screen, whereas this would just start the instant meeting, and then from there, if you're by yourself, you can bring content in. If you want to invite people to your Zoom meeting, there's always an invite option within the participant panel. But simply put, this is the desktop client. This is how we operate here at Zoom. I am using chat throughout the entire day. If I'm not in a webinar with all of our wonderful customers, I'm most likely catching up on chats. I'm having one-on-one conversations with colleagues. If it's not a one-on-one conversation, I'm definitely part of a chat channel, basically a group chat, and a lot of activity is taking place within the chat scenario, right? So the great thing about chat is that if you're having correspondence with colleagues, there's always this option here called meeting. It's basically the camera icon in chat. So I can take that chat with the person that I'm having communication with and simply transition us to an instant Zoom meeting by clicking on the camera icon in our chat panel. So we go from one form of communication to now a full interactive collaborative Zoom meeting. Same thing with Zoom phone. I'll hold off on that because I have some slides that we'll come back to a little later in the webinar. So I'm going to hold off on that. Meetings is going to show you all the meetings that you have either scheduled or that you're a participant of that Zoom meeting. So this is going to show you a listing of the meetings. Contacts is going to display to you all the contacts. If you're part of an organization and the organization has rolled out this client, you're most likely going to click on clients and, or excuse me, contacts, and you're going to see all of your internal contacts. You can also add external contacts. If you just go into contacts, if you're using the client, you can add people by their email address, and then they get an invitation sent to them. Hopefully they're using Zoom, and if they're using this client, then you can use chat and you can communicate with them, right? So it's a great way to naturally just remain in communication with your colleagues. And as I mentioned several times, we use this here at Zoom because we're remote. How do we communicate with each other? We're always either on phone calls or using chat to communicate with each other, transferring files back and forth, recording audio messages instead of typing something. Here's a recorded message. Here's a message that I need to get across to a colleague, right? So there's all kinds of different ways that you can communicate within chat itself. So this is the desktop client. I want to point out my profile icon. If I were to click on that, it's going to open up where I can get access into the settings of the client. I can use this field to leave a personal note or a status behind. I can use default statuses that the application provides. I could manage my own personal profile. This would branch me over into my online Zoom account, try top features that Zoom is recommending. This will branch you out to the help center of Zoom, support.zoom.us. If you happen to be using the desktop client as I speak, and you're simply wondering, am I on 5.5.5? You just want to choose the option check for updates, and then you'll see your version number. If you need to upgrade, you'll be prompted to upgrade to the latest version. When we go into the settings, though, this is a very important detail, right? Because when we click on settings, oops, I don't have a screenshot of that. I apologize. The settings is going to take you into the back end of the application. And that's where you can configure your virtual background. You can have a nice library of images for your virtual backgrounds. They could be images or videos that you want to have as your virtual background. You can fine tune your audio and your video for your meetings that you're having online. A lot of great options are available for you in settings. So I simply recommend, if you do in fact get this client downloaded and installed, before you start using it, just go right into settings. And the way that I got into that, you can actually get into settings two ways. You can click on this gear icon and it will take you directly into the settings, or you can just click on your profile icon and then choose settings from here. And then you get a menu bar on the left-hand side of your screen where you can fine tune each section that contains its own set of settings, right? All right, let's move on to the next subject. We have a lot of material to cover, as I mentioned, and I want to keep us moving along. Okay, Zoom meetings, right? This is, in a sense, kind of our bread and butter, if you will, of one of the offerings that we provide in our platform. With Zoom meetings, you have high definition video by default, high quality audio right out of the box. Mobile versions of Zoom meetings can be held on a mobile device, on a tablet, so there's support for that type of a device. You can, of course, run your Zoom meeting from your desktop. There's also Zoom for home, for personal devices and conference rooms. You can have up to 1,000 people in your Zoom meeting. 49 people at a time can be in what's called gallery view. So you would simply have pages of people, up to 49 people on gallery view. Virtual backgrounds are supported. You can always start a Zoom meeting using a one-click option. If you're using that client that I just introduced to you, you just click on that camera icon and it starts an instant meeting. You can also start an instant meeting from within your online account. If you log in your online account, to the top right side of your account, there's always an option to host a meeting. And if you choose that option, you'll have a prompt to either start the meeting with video or without video. Whatever you choose, you're bypassing the entire scheduling process and getting directly into a Zoom meeting. So that's a nice way to just fire up a session and get things going, right, immediately. There's, of course, the option to record your Zoom meetings locally onto your computer system. If you're on a paid-for subscription, you can record your Zoom meetings to your recording library inside of your Zoom account. So that's what's called a cloud recording with transcripts provided for those recordings. There's also multi-screen sharing capabilities, co-annotation, remote control. You can give control of an application, for example, if you happen to be an instructor, for example, and I want a student to take control of Excel or something that we're working on together. I can give control of that application to a participant, and they get that real-time hands-on experience remotely on my computer system. At any time that I want to gain control back from that participant, I simply move my mouse and double-click anywhere on my screen, and it gives me control back of the application. So we can share and collaborate using remote control. It's a really awesome feature. Breakout rooms is an awesome feature as well. That is a feature that comes with Zoom meetings by default. So if you're wondering, I've heard breakout rooms, I heard they're super cool. Do I have to pay extra for that feature? And the answer is no. It comes with Zoom meetings. Polling is not available for free. Polling would come with a paid-for subscription. But of course, the chat panel is certainly something that comes by default with Zoom meetings. Mobile features like sharing from a mobile screen is certainly supported. Mobile scheduling is also available for you, as well as Siri integration. You can play videos with audio in a Zoom meeting, dual camera support, as well as dual monitor support. And of course, you can also share your slides, which I'm personally not doing today, but you can actually share your slides as a virtual background. And you would simply, on live video, you would actually be placed into your presentation. It's actually really cool. Looks a lot different than what you're experiencing here in the webinar environment, but give that a shot. It's no extra charge. It comes, again, by default when you're sharing content in your Zoom meeting. All right, so a couple of extra details. I did mention that you can schedule your Zoom meetings in different formats, right? You can log into your account. That's what I tend to call the classic approach. Always log in your account, learn how to schedule your meetings from there. That's home base for you. And then eventually, if you haven't already, you'll branch out and start to schedule your Zoom meetings from Outlook or Google Calendar, or of course, the desktop client. Either way, you're always having these options to schedule up your Zoom meetings. All right, so a couple of details when we get into a Zoom meeting. We always want to make sure that your meetings are as secure as possible, right? So one of those things that you want to look at as soon as you start your Zoom meeting is looking into the security option that only you see. So only a host is going to see the security icon where you have control of your Zoom meeting. On top of that, you can permit your participants to have access to some of the items as a host that you do. For example, if I want my participants to share their screens in my Zoom meeting, I can go ahead and check this item off. I can permit them to chat. If I want to determine who they can chat with, I can go to my chat panel and determine those privileges from the chat panel. I can allow my participants to rename themselves or unmute themselves, start their video or stop their video. I basically control the Zoom meeting at all times, right? This is a nice list of all the items that I'm able to control within my Zoom meeting. So as a best practice, it's very important for you as soon as you start your Zoom meeting to immediately go over to the security section of your Zoom meeting and at least preview what is checked off, what is not checked off, what would you like to enable or disable within your Zoom meeting. You can also suspend participant activities. That's on a case-by-case basis, of course, but what that basically means is if you need to bring your meeting not to a close, but actually to a freezing state, if you will, or a holding state, let's stop in our tracks. I need to stop all activities that are taking place in my Zoom meeting. This option would do that for you. So your meeting is still up and running, but everyone's video, all of their audio is now disabled. And you're doing that because maybe someone has caused some sort of a disruption and you simply want to report that person to Zoom. So that's what suspend participant activities could do. It allows you to remain active in your Zoom meeting as the host, but all participants are in this frozen state, if you will. They can't hear anything, they can't see anything. They get a prompt on their screen letting them know that they're in a suspended state. And then you can report a person to Zoom if need be, and then go ahead and go back to a live state by simply re-enabling chat, audio, video, and so on, and you come back to a live state. So that's certainly an option for you. This is the layout of a Zoom meeting. In this scenario, just kind of breaking things down at a very high level, right? In this experience here of a Zoom meeting, the host is not broadcasting themselves on video. So this is their default profile image that is hosted in their online account. As I start my Zoom meeting, I always have the ability to click on this caret option to the far right, or I shouldn't say far right, but next to the microphone, right? If I click on this caret option, This is going to give me a menu, and I can switch to a different microphone. I can switch to a different set of speakers in case I want to change things up audio-wise for my Zoom meeting. I always recommend that you test your speakers and your microphones so that you make sure that you go through a testing phase. It's kind of a 1, 2, 3 test. Test your speakers, test your microphone to make sure your audio is good to go before you officially unmute yourself and begin to broadcast audio to your attendees. So these are audio options here. You can also click on the caret option for video, and you can swap out to different cameras if you have more than one connected to your system. You can choose a virtual background if you want to change it up. This will tap you into your Zoom client where you can take care of that, or it will tap you, if you're not using the client, it will take you into your profile section, the virtual background section in your online Zoom account so that you can choose a different background that you might have uploaded there. Video settings will also allow you to fine tune how your video camera is operating as you begin to broadcast your video out to your attendees. Let's go back a little. I want to kind of minimize those images there and just have us focus on these items here, right? So there's security, participant panel. This is how I manage participants. I can mute people, unmute people. I can chat with my participants. I can send links in chat. This is the item where I can share content in my Zoom meeting. We'll get to that in a couple seconds. I can record my Zoom meeting. And if I click on that record option, I can determine how do I want to record. Depending on the type of account I have, I can record locally to my computer system. So that's always going to be an option by default. Or if I do have a paid for subscription, I can record my Zoom meeting directly to my Zoom account as a cloud-based file. Closed captions, you're seeing those in real time as I speak. You might have disabled your own subtitles, but this is where I could enable them in my Zoom meeting. My breakout rooms, certainly a great interactive feature. We won't necessarily cover breakout rooms in this webinar, but if you want, I can certainly provide you with a link to a breakout room recording. And I'll make sure that I do that for you. In case you are interested in breakout rooms, I'll provide you with a recording of a webinar. These are reactions, right? A great way to have interaction in your Zoom meeting is having you and your audience or participants leverage these items. Again, your meetings are meant to be interactive. They're meant to be collaborative. So there's a lot of great features in the Zoom meeting environment. This option for support, if you have a paid for subscription, you can actually make contact with a support rep. And depending on the type of situation that you are encountering, a support rep would be able to join your Zoom meeting and help resolve any sort of technical issues that you are experiencing. And then last but not least, my more option is going to allow me to stream my Zoom meeting out to Facebook or YouTube. Streaming is only provided for paid for subscriptions. I can end my meeting, of course, as the host of the session, whereas a participant, this label would be titled Leave Meeting instead of End Meeting. And then up at top, I have different viewing options. I can go from speaker view to what is called gallery view. Gallery view would allow me to see up to 49 people that are displaying themselves on live camera. All right, so let's go a little further. I'm sure you're interested in knowing, how do I share content in a Zoom meeting, right? That's definitely one of the most used features in the Zoom meeting environment is, of course, sharing content. The great thing is you can share anything that you want to have people see in your Zoom meeting. The best practice that you want to adopt as a host of a Zoom meeting is you want to open up the applications that you intend to share. If you want to have your audience see your PowerPoint presentation, if you want your audience to see Excel, Word, a website, whatever it is that you want people to see during that Zoom meeting, you have to open up those applications in advance. So open them up, do not minimize them. That way, when you're ready to share, you just click on share. And then you're going to see this window pop up just for you. By default, I can always take my attendees to my desktop, right? Let's go out to my desktop. From there, I want to open up several different apps. So that's always a preference. It all depends on the host and where they want to take people and how do they want to take people to see content. Do I want to take you to my desktop, or do I want to just share the application exclusively? So I never take you to my desktop. Let's just focus on, in this case, Excel. So in this case, I have two desktops. So two desktops, I can share one at a time. I can share a virtual whiteboard with you. This would be a clean slate screen with annotation capabilities, markup capabilities, right? That's what annotations are. So we could brainstorm in our Zoom meeting using the annotation tools. And that's a great way to have collaboration, interaction taking place in your Zoom session. I can share content from an iPhone or an iPad, provided that those devices are connected via AirPlay or a cable connection. And then last but not least, this is a nice screenshot of all the applications that I had up and running at the time that I took this image here. So I have Excel opened. I have several browsers opened, Google Chrome, a presentation, YouTube channel, a calendar, a PDF file, website, pricing page, and then a PowerPoint presentation, right? So all I have to do in order to share something with you, let's just say I wanted to share everything Zoom. There's that presentation that we're in right now. I just double click on Google Slides. That's it. And then in Google Slides, I have an option to click on present, and it takes us all into a full screen view. So that's how I share content in a Zoom meeting. If I wanted to share, say, something from YouTube, right? There's a couple of steps that you do before you double click on the YouTube video. So I have to come down here to the bottom of this share screen and choose the option share sound. I want you to hear the video that I play back for you. On top of that, if I intend to take that video to a full screen, I'm going to check this box so that the video broadcast is optimized. And then the last step is to actually click on the YouTube channel, so the browser where YouTube is existing. So I double click on this browser here. I most likely take the video to full screen, and then I would just play it back for the attendees. If I don't check this box here, then of course the attendees see the video because I'm sharing that, but they're not going to be able to hear it. The video is on my browser, on my computer. So I need to have that sound on my computer broadcasted from Zoom out to my audience. And that's what this box does, so that my attendees can hear that really cool video that perhaps I want to have them experience, right? So that's how you share content in a Zoom meeting. There's some other options here inside of advanced and files that I'll have you self-discover. If you don't have an account just yet, right, you can sign up for a free subscription. All of these items are available for you, whether you're on a paid for subscription or not, the 3 options of sharing, right? So there's your method of sharing content in a Zoom meeting. While you are sharing content, always know that this floating tray, which basically is all of the icons at the bottom of the Zoom meeting, they become part of this floating tray. And you can drag and drop this tray anywhere you want it to be placed for you. If you move your mouse away from the icons, the tray itself, this black area, will disappear so that you visually are not interrupted with the tray, right? And anything you need from the tray, like let's let someone into the Zoom meeting from the waiting room, for example. You're going to get a notification that someone has entered your waiting room. You can admit them from that notification that you will see. Or if you want to perhaps quickly mute someone, you can click on participants. Your panel opens up for you while you're sharing content, and you're doing that. So basically, a lot of hosts tend to ask, how can I multitask and control my Zoom meeting while I'm presenting content? And that's what this tray is there for, is to give you access to all the items that are in your Zoom meeting in this floating tray. Again, it can be drag and dropped. You can place it anywhere you want. Because I use 2 monitors, I actually have my actual tray on my other monitor here, so that I don't even see it. If I need something from the tray, I move my mouse over to my extra laptop here, and now I see my tray, right? But I'm going to stick to my presentation. But just wanted to point out a few details in this slide that we're seeing here. The host has taken their audience to zoom.us, so of course they're sharing a web browser. And then the host has decided to click on annotate, and these are the annotation items, the markup capabilities, right? You can annotate on any content that you're sharing. Most people tend to annotate on a whiteboard, but do know that if you, in this scenario, host is at zoom.us, if the host wants to point things out or circle a few items that perhaps need some refinement, or let's change the verbiage on this content right here, they can use drawing tools and circle that content out to have people tune into. That's your marking up option, annotation tools right here, okay? Let's get into the webinar environment. So the webinar environment is what we're in right now. As a participant, this is a great way for you to practice, right? But on the flip side, me being the host, I experience something a little different than what you are experiencing. I, of course, have absolute control of the session, number one. And on top of that, I have control of the features that are available for you to either use or not be able to use. For example, chatting in today's session, right? But a webinar is meant to be less interactive. A webinar is meant to evangelize information out to a respective audience. So when will we use Zoom meetings? When will we use webinars? And that's what this slide is going to explain to us at a very high level, right? So in the webinar environment, which is what we're in, right? Only panelists, that's an actual role in a webinar. You have a host, you have co-host, you have panelists, and then you have participants. All of you are participants. I'm, in a sense, kind of wearing 2 hats. I'm the host, and I'm also a panelist. As the host, I'm the person who initially scheduled this webinar, I started it, I'm also delivering and I'm presenting content. So I'm on that panelist side, which allows me to share content with the audience. I'm the only one on audio and video. In the webinar environment, you can have 100 people acting as panelists, and those panelists would be able to help answer questions in Q&A. Not every panelist needs to present content. Not every panelist needs to be on video. I just need some colleagues to come on into this webinar. As I present, I want you to help out in Q&A. I want you to send some links based on respective topics we're covering, send those out to the audience in chat, right? And we're just kind of complementing the entire session together. But panelists is one role. And a webinar environment is best going to be used for a couple of details. One, we might prefer that we don't need to see people on video and audio, because by default, that's what you're experiencing right now, right? As a participant, you're not on video, you are not on audio. I don't necessarily need that in this environment. I need to evangelize information to you, which in this case is everything Zoom. So you're more in a listen and view only mode in that webinar aspect, but the platform itself is best used for keynote presentations, product announcements, everything Zoom, right? Educational sessions, all hands webinars, where again, you prefer that the audience doesn't necessarily need that same full interactivity option like they can have in a Zoom meeting, which leads us to Zoom meetings, right? Zoom meetings allows all content to be shared by participants, provided that the host permits participants to have access to sharing content. All participants can be on video as well as on audio. When we think about a Zoom meeting, at least right now in this time of our world, people are using Zoom meetings for so many different purposes. May it be classes that are being held over Zoom. Those types of classes could be health-based courses. My daughter, who's 16 years old in high school, is still taking classes online, right? And the list goes on and on and on as to how people are using Zoom meetings. Whereas, again, coming back to the webinar environment, a lot more of a different approach. We're going to be using a webinar on a case-by-case basis based on, we don't need that interactivity to be taking place. This is not an online training class. We want to just evangelize information out to the audience. And yet at the same time, have some really awesome, robust features from the platform itself. So it's very flexible. It feels a lot like Zoom meetings, but different approach to it, right? So some internal use cases: town hall, all hands sessions, corporate communications, sales kickoff events, employee training, large lectures that are taking place, a new hire onboarding. External use cases could be a marketing event or a conference, investor relations and earning calls, product launches, training certifications, masterclass or workshops, a concert or a recital could be held over the webinar environment. And with the webinar environment, you're able to broaden your reach with a solution that you can certainly trust. The great thing for me as the host of these webinars is that I don't need to manage participants, right? You're only able to use so much features that I have determined that you're going to have access to, which for you would be raising your hand, which I have disabled, the ability for you to send questions in Q&A, and that's really about it. You're just tuning into the session. This approach of scheduling is very simple. Registration comes with webinars by default. Screen sharing is certainly an option. That's how I'm presenting this deck out to you. Q&A, so you can ask questions, and there's full reporting capabilities post-webinar. Before webinar, there's registration reports that you can run as well. Very scalable. You can have up to 100 people acting as panelists in the session. As mentioned earlier, up to 50,000 people in a live attendee state. You can stream the webinar, much like you can a Zoom meeting, out to Facebook and YouTube, or you can make those webinars available for on-demand access. Very innovative when it comes to the platform itself. Live polling is certainly available for you. Q&A. I am not moderating Q&A right now. Right? I'm just kind of focusing in on the content, but if I did have colleagues join me on the session, they would most likely be answering questions in Q&A. I can have slides as a virtual background as well, so that's certainly supported, much like Zoom meetings. And there's integration into Salesforce, Pardot, Eloqua, all of these nice platforms that you can actually leverage Zoom webinars for. And of course, last but not least, webinar is absolutely secure, right? I can still set up a webinar in that same spirit that I can of a Zoom meeting, requiring a passcode in order for people to get into the webinar, requiring registration, authentication, deny or block attendees is certainly an option for me. And I can certainly lock the webinar as well so that no people can continue to come on in. I can do that with a webinar. I can do that with meetings as well. I can lock my sessions down. With the webinar environment, it's very easy to engage and interact with your audience. Because of the amount of attendees that I have in this respective webinar, I normally would have enabled a few interactive features for us, but because there's so many people in the session, that's what I decided to do. I kind of trim things away to just keep it simple, and let's just kind of go through the content, right? So chat right now for you is disabled, but of course you still see your chat panel so that I can send you links towards the tail end of the webinar. You've most likely been using Q&A for those of you who are sending me questions. This is what Q&A looks like. If we focus on this little screenshot here, on our side, if you're wondering what's the difference between Q&A and chat, they kind of look alike when it comes to the participant view. But on our view as the host or panelists of the session, when you send us a question, that question is now sent to a directory called open. So we get to see all open questions. We can respond to those questions by providing a typed out response. When we respond to you, that question is then sent over to the answered section and removes it from the queue of open. So for us on the panelist side, it keeps things nice and organized for us. And at the same time, when you think about it from a chat perspective, we're not continuing a lengthy thread within one panel. In the Q&A session, it is nice and organized for us based on answering questions and what questions are left to be answered. We can certainly dismiss a question as well at our discretion, right? And that will be tucked away into the dismissed section. I can certainly promote an attendee to become a panelist if we wanted that person to, in a sense, share the stage with us, maybe perhaps share a testimony, depending on the type of webinar. There's also post-session surveys that can be provided during the scheduling of the webinar. You can set up a post-event survey so that when your participants leave the session, they are able to participate in a survey, and then of course you can run a survey report and gauge the performance of your session, get some feedback, what pluses and deltas, if you will, into whatever you're capturing data-wise on that survey. Okay, so one thing that you might have noticed is that we're not going through the scheduling process of either Zoom meeting or webinar. All we're doing here in this webinar is simply introducing to you the platforms and ultimately what do they contain. In the webinar environment, before I actually went live with all of you, I was in what is called a practice session. So when I schedule up my webinar, there's an option called Enable Practice Session. And this is a great feature because what it allows us to do as panelists is actually start the webinar, but we're not live yet. We're in a practice state right here. Attendees cannot join until we start the webinar. So I actually started this webinar about 15 minutes early, and I went live, so I clicked on Start Webinar around 5 minutes before the official start time. And that's when you all started to come on into the session. But I was already in the webinar beforehand, right? And the reason why I do that, especially if I had other colleagues joining me as panelists, or maybe I'm hosting a webinar on the behalf of another organization, and I want to make sure that everything's going to run smoothly, right? That's what practice session is all about. So you log in your Zoom account, you start the webinar, and you're in basically a practice session, a behind the scenes, if you will, type of a scenario. And that allows me as the host to test my audio, test my video. If there were more people joining as panelists, I would test their video and their audio, making sure we're all good to go before we go live with the session. I'm testing out presentations. I'm making sure that all of the privileges for each and every one of these options in the webinar environment have been set. I'm fine-tuning a few things. And then eventually when we are ready to go live, I click on Start Webinar, and then we're in that live state. So much like Zoom meetings, I always have the ability to click on my caret option for the audio in this case, and I can switch to a different microphone, switch to a different set of speakers, test microphones and speakers, and so on. Right? So the same settings apply. And then, of course, down the bottom are all of the options that are provided to me as the host: my participant panel, Q&A, polls, chat, share screen, which is the exact same as it is in a Zoom meeting. I can record, much like I can in a Zoom meeting, live transcript, and then the streaming options out to Facebook or YouTube. End the webinar, and then up at top, I have viewing options. I can exit from full screen view, or if other colleagues were on video, we'd be able to change the view from speaker view to gallery view, for example. Badge option provides to me in the webinar environment the webinar information, the invite link in case I need to invite people on the fly to the webinar, my information as the host, my passcode to the webinar, and so on. Right, so just some security options. If I wanted other panelists to be able to share content in that webinar, I can determine who can share in that webinar. but only panelists can share, not participants, right? So I can say, not only will I be able to share content, but I also want panelists to be able to share. When someone is sharing, who can start sharing when someone is sharing content, right? Do I want to be the only one that can bring more content in as Ricardo is presenting material? Or do I want all panelists to be able to also bring their content in as someone else is sharing? So these are options for you. There's my live transcription. I clicked on live CC earlier. I chose enable auto transcription, and that's how you get to see your subtitles appear at the bottom of your screen. Okay, this is more colleagues in a practice session in this scenario, just to show you, again, behind the scenes before a webinar goes live, doing a video check, making sure audio is good to go, and then the host would ultimately click on start webinar, and the webinar is officially live. Okay, so we're almost nearing towards the tail end. Thank you so much for your patience when it comes to the webinar. I'm just taking a quick look at time just to make sure that I am pacing myself here. All right, so what is a Zoom room, right? Remember earlier I talked about conference rooms that are, in a sense, Zoom-based. So a Zoom room is a software-based room system that leverages hardware appliances, kits, or customizable components to create an easy-to-use meeting experience. For end users, Zoom Rooms makes it super easy in order to book rooms, start their meetings, and ultimately share content. And for IT teams, a Zoom Room is part of a single collaboration stack that's simple to purchase, deploy, and manage while ensuring user adoption and IT success. So basically a Zoom Room is a built-out conference room that is Zoom-based, right? With all of the hardware where people can come on into a session, into a conference room, and experience a Zoom meeting, right? So let's go a little further. They're software-based conference rooms with HD video and audio, high-quality video, audio, and web conferencing in any size room with off-the-shelf hardware, wireless sharing capabilities, one touch to meet or to reserve a room. You can hop into a Zoom room at the office when we eventually go back, and you can choose a one-click option and start a Zoom meeting from that Zoom room. Enterprise remote management, dashboard and alerts for scalable management group by location or room type for IT assignments. Software side, right? So these are actual samples of Zoom rooms. People use them for training, Zoom meeting on a desktop, Zoom meeting from a Zoom room in a huddle room, and of course on a mobile device as well. So yeah, Zoom Room Clients leverages core Zoom client code that is customized for a conference room experience, high feature velocity, multifunctional space beyond just video conferencing, and they're built from the ground up, right? So basically we have design teams that can work with you to decide what is the best way that we want this room to be built out to be Zoom based, right? In this scenario, we could see a trainer is in person with people. God, I miss those days, right? And then on top of that, we have someone coming on into the session, and this is technically a Zoom room where they're plumbing that person in. There's a camera up at top that is broadcasting this gentleman on video. This person is seeing this entire class in that experience as well. So let's go a little further. Zoom rooms are perfect for executive offices or focus rooms, huddle rooms, board and conference rooms, and of course, training rooms, right? And again, I'll provide you with links with regards to Zoom rooms. Super awesome way to have an experience in person, all right? One touch to start a meeting. Zoom users tend to save an average of 50 minutes a week by joining or starting meetings from a Zoom room. That's really cool to know. Easily share multiple desktops at the same time and provide wireless sharing options for guests and employees. One click to proximity, that's a really cool feature. Multi-sharing capabilities, option to share via browsers, integrated into rooms for audio and video. And then last but not least, I know you've been waiting for Zoom Phone, as mentioned, a classic PBX phone system, right? I work remotely. I do not have a desk phone here at my home office here. I'm solely using our client, which contains Zoom Phone. And from the client, I receive phone calls. Zoom has provided me with an exclusive phone number. Zoom can provide organizations with phone numbers as well. Or as an organization, you can certainly port your numbers, transfer your existing numbers over to Zoom Phone. So when people are calling that number, your either desktop client will ring. This is an exact image of when someone is calling you, you have the option to either accept that call or decline the call. That would be from your desktop client. You simply would put on a headset or your earbuds to speak into that phone conversation. There's voicemail, call queues, texting capabilities. And the reason why I have the mobile version of our desktop client installed onto my cell phone is because I work here from home. If I want to walk away from my desk, go out for a walk with my kids, let's get out of the house, let's go grab a bite somewhere else other than just being here at home, right? I'm not going to worry about what I'm missing out at when it comes to work. And the reason being is I take my cell phone with me. If anyone needs to get in touch with me, they're either sending me a chat message on my cell phone, I'm simply accessing the Zoom client and I'm getting those messages. If people need to call me or I need to place a phone call, I'm using Zoom phone. So I'm not using my personal cell phone number to receive text messages or phone calls from colleagues or anyone that is part of my network. I'm communicating with them from the client mobilely or mobile-wise, either using Zoom phone or chat. Right? That's what I love about Zoom phone myself. And on top of that, it's very easy to use as an end user. Very simple to configure for yourself within your own Zoom account. But simply put, Zoom phone is a modern phone solution, right? Seamless integrated PBX features. Everything that we're used to using from a phone system is available in Zoom phone. You can have domestic and international calling plans, seamlessly elevate calls to a Zoom meeting. I love that feature so much. I could be on a phone call with a colleague, and if we feel we need to get into a Zoom meeting, on my keypad for Zoom phone, I click on this camera icon, which is the Zoom Meet option, and in one click, we are now in a Zoom meeting. So it takes our call, and now we're just listening to each other in that Zoom meeting. I don't need to connect to computer audio. I'm already on a conversation with that person. So we just get the visual, right? The Zoom meeting piece. And then from there, if I need to invite people to the session, there's always that invite option within the Zoom meeting to bring people in. There's a single point of administration. If you happen to be an IT admin member of your organization and you're responsible, for example, of administering Zoom for your colleagues, right, on the admin level, Zoom phone is an extra add-on inside of the Zoom account. So you're not going to go somewhere else to administer and operate on Zoom phone. It's simply an extra line item inside of the online account that you already log into in order to administer Zoom for your organization. So that's what a lot of IT admin teams really appreciate, is that it's just an extra thing that they're seeing inside of the account in order to manage. Single unified app experience, call detail reporting, and quality monitoring. It is absolutely secure and reliable, HD voice quality over service delivered by adaptive rate codecs and globally distributed data centers. I do want to mention that Zoom phone can be integrated into desktop phones as well. So you don't necessarily have to completely abandon your actual phones. You can still use your desktop phones and simply have Zoom phone integrated into those phones. I do have a list that I'll provide to you of certified hardware that Zoom phone will be compatible with, and I'll make sure that I give that to you in your chat panel as a link. Okay? And there's a quick little snippet of what the keypad provides to you. You can always record conversations. Sometimes an account will determine that's a great feature, but we're only going to provide certain users the ability to record conversations. There's that Meet option, but it's a classic keypad, right? I can mute, access to a keypad right here, turn up my volume, manage the volume, add another call, so we can merge calls, bring people into that conversation that we're having, or transfer the call to a Zoom meeting or to another person. So it's all there for us. It's a full-blown phone system that we're already used to leveraging throughout the day. Let's talk about chat very quickly. So Zoom chat is part of the desktop client, as I mentioned earlier. That's how we communicate here at Zoom. A couple of details when it comes to our chat capability in the client. Transferring files back and forth to each other. That's super, super handy. We're constantly doing that. It's a native desktop version as well as the mobile version. Very secure when it comes to meetings. You can start your meetings from a Zoom client, or if you're having a chat conversation with a colleague, remember that camera icon where you have the ability to start a meeting. Seamless one-on-one conversations as well as group meetings can be taking place from chat. There's interoperability for Jabber, Skype for Business, Microsoft Teams, and Slack. And that's, sorry, a little dated slide there, but included in a free Zoom meeting license. And I believe that would be, so the Zoom client is on the house. I'll come back to this if need be. Apologize for that dated information there. All right, let's go a little further with Zoom chat. Very able to be managed by you as an end user. This is a quick little snippet of the settings in the desktop client. As mentioned, you can fine tune your audio, your virtual background. There's where chat is going to exist, and just a few little snippets of options that you can personally customize for yourself. Keep all unread messages on top, show unread message counts for me, push notifications, push all my messages or only private messages or mentions of my name, right? So obviously you can customize the way chat is going to operate for you, much like you can customize a lot of these items inside of the desktop client as well. And let's see, Zoom chat, perfect for all departments and teams. Absolutely. There's a lot of great things that we do in chat. You know, like I mentioned earlier when I first got started, chat is not only just one-on-one conversation, but we have a lot of different chat channels here at Zoom. A lot of them are team-based, a lot of them are project-based, role-based, and then of course we also have social chat channels based on all kinds of different topics that we are involved in, right? So it's a great way to just remain in communication. But I do want to mention one extra detail, and that is that you can also add external contacts to your desktop client, right? So that you can communicate with them in the Zoom client as well. They would have to be using the client as well. And if they don't have an access or an account to Zoom, at least what they can do is set up a free Zoom account in order to be leveraging that desktop client. And then finally, our app marketplace, right? So there's a lot of great things here at the app marketplace. Basically, what you can do is, you know, find an application that you find is going to be useful for you. There's a lot of great details here, like give me an application that's pertaining to education, and then we'll display to you the results of those applications. But it basically helps you remain efficient as you're using the desktop client, or you want to use something in the spirit of an integration option. It's all there for you when it comes to the app marketplace. So remember, I'll be providing you with a link to our app marketplace as we get ready to close out the session here. One thing before we leave to the webinar here, always remember to please bookmark for yourself support.zoom.us. I have been using this for years. It is so handy. If I need an extra piece of technical detail on a feature or something in mind, right? I can run a search on polling, breakout rooms, registration, managing audio, whatever it is that I need to get that content back from me. There's a wonderful search bar here for you. We have quick start guides, we have video tutorials, and of course you can certainly sign up for training as well if need be. So with that being said, let me get those links for you first and follow my instructions when it comes to these links, because the chat panel and webinar is a little different than Zoom meetings. What I mean by that is you are not able to save the content of chat in this webinar. So you'll have to click on these links that I send to you. So give me a couple of seconds. I'd like for you, if it's not much to ask, to come out of a full screen. On the top right side of your webinar screen, you have the option to come out of a full screen, so exit full screen. And the reason why I'm asking you to do that is because I'd like for you to click on these links, and as you do so, you're going to see that they're launching for you in a separate browser. So give me a couple of seconds as I get the links ready to go, and I'm going to paste these into chat for you. And you'll want to start clicking on these links. There's not going to be a lot of them, but a good handful, right? And here they come. All right, so there's a nice bundle of links here, and you'll see these in just a couple of seconds. There you go. Okay, so I provided you with an immediate link to Zoom meetings. That would be the main page for Zoom meetings, a main page for Zoom video webinar, meetings and webinars, a main support page that would lead you out to the help center. I provided you a link for Zoom phone, Zoom rooms, and the Zoom marketplace, right? And let me get you a few more links for chat. There you go, for Zoom chat, and I'll get that into your panel. There you go, okay? What I'm going to do now is I will go ahead and answer some questions in Q&A, and then we'll get ready to close out here. I'll spend about 5 minutes or less in Q&A. I have a lot of questions, and unfortunately, and by default, right, I'm not going to be able to answer every single one of these questions here. So here's a great question. What is a recurring Zoom session, right? And that basically means it's a repeating Zoom meeting, right? If we take ourselves out of the Zoom zone, if you will, for a couple of seconds here, When we schedule something in Outlook or Google Calendar as a recurring appointment, maybe I have a team meeting on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and on those 3 days, it's at the same time, 8:30 in the morning. I'm going to schedule that meeting in Google Calendar, and again, we're not talking about Zoom, and I want to set it up to be a recurring appointment. So I choose that recurring option so that it repeats every Monday, every Wednesday, and every Friday at the same time. And I could choose an end date. We'll only meet on these 3 days for the next 2 months. We're working on a very important project. So on these days, it's important that we check in and have pulse checks on progress of the project, right? That's a recurring appointment. Same thing in a Zoom meeting. You're basically going through the scheduling process and saying, do I have this meeting at the same time on these respective dates? And if the answer is yes, then you're going to choose the recurring option. Let's see. I'll take another question here. Okay, so Linda, you asked about pre-recording presentations. So that would be something that would be considered on demand. You can also just simply record a Zoom meeting, right? With no one in there. You can just record a session like I'm doing here, and then make it available on demand. And how you make it available is in all kinds of different options. Let's just say that you recorded your Zoom meeting or webinar locally onto your computer system. That would be considered a universal MP4 file. And then what you'll need to do in order for people to access that recording and watch the session, you could upload it to YouTube. You could upload it to Box or Dropbox or G Drive. You're basically determining, how do I want to make this file available for people to view? Or in the webinar environment, you can make the session available on demand. And what that will do for you is it will provide, so when you have access to Zoom webinars, you're provided with an events list page. And that events list page is an online page where you can post that webinar to be accessed on demand, right? So I want to watch something that you provided. Go to this page and it's there for you. I get to play it back. You can have me register for the on-demand video or not. You can password protect it. A lot of great things that you can do. I would highly recommend, if you're interested in learning more about on-demand, just visit the Help Center. And in the search bar, just type up on-demand so that you get the respective content to come back for you. All right. Will closed captioning be available from Zoom now? So great questions. Closed captions are available for paid-for subscriptions, and that is being rolled out in phases. We started to roll out closed captioning about a month ago now, but I don't know if every single account in the world has been given the option of receiving it just yet, but I do know that we have been rolling out closed captions for free for paid-for subscribers in phases. So if you are wondering, do you have access to it and you're on a paid-for subscription, go into your settings of your Zoom account, and I would spend some time inside of the in-meeting basic section where you would be able to see that option. You most likely just need to enable it if you do have access to it. Let's see. Is it possible to freeze the uploaded background? So a virtual background is basically an image. And if it's not an image, it's a video. If it's a video, it's going to be looped. It'll just continuously play over and over and over. If that's something that you don't want to do, then you'd most likely want to use an image in replacement. So the image is fixed. It's not live, right? That's the virtual background. Let's see. Okay, and then we have a person asking, how much is the subscription for the 50,000 person capacity? I would certainly recommend speaking to a sales representative. That there's all kinds of different subscriptions that you can work with, right? But naturally, what you'd want to do is, let's just say that you need a webinar to have that amount of people just in advance, and logistically, you'd most likely want to touch base with your representative at Zoom and have that discussion with them, so that it's not only just about the capacity, but it's making sure, is your account capable of hosting that amount of people? What are those requirements? And then most likely provide you with some extra insight into best practices, right, that you'd want to take into consideration for having such a large type of a webinar. Let's see. I'll take a few more questions here, and I do got to close out the session. Great question here, John. You ask, is there any way to get webinars as a tab on the desktop application? Great question. Zoom webinars, in a sense, only exists inside of your online Zoom account. You cannot schedule webinars from Google Calendar or Outlook. Everything, because it has a lot of features, from the pre-planning stages to the scheduling to the management of the webinar before it goes live, everything is there centralized in the online account. So at this time, it's not available external of the Zoom account. And what you most likely implying is the desktop client, right? Not quite yet. Let's see. I'm not seeing anybody's screen, so rest assured, I don't see you on video. I don't hear you. You're completely muted. Your video is completely disabled as a participant when you join a webinar, a Zoom webinar, right? So I see some of you asking about video and how come, can you see me? And nope, I'm the only one on video in this session here. Let's see. How do you create or select a backdrop so that what is behind you is your company logo? So I would just go online. If I were you and I wanted to have my company logo as my virtual background, I would just go online to, in my case, Zoom, and look for a Zoom logo. Obviously, we have those internally. I have custom virtual backgrounds that Zoom provides to me, but I like to use something of my own, right? So I also have my own backgrounds as well. But all you would have to do is basically find an image of your company logo and save it. And then if you're using the desktop client, you go into the settings and go to virtual background, where you would be able to upload that image, and then it would be your virtual background, much like what I'm using. I'm actually working out of the breakfast nook area in my kitchen, but I have a virtual background. So it looks like I have this really cool room area, right, with a nice window. And that's a virtual background. But it looks real, right? So there you go. I'll take one more question here and I'll go ahead and close this out. Looking for some questions pertaining to what we covered here in the webinar. Is the whiteboard a part of Zoom, or do you use another program? Great question there, Thomas. No, Zoom has always provided the virtual whiteboard feature. If you want to use an external whiteboard, go for it, right? We provide one when you click on share and you just choose whiteboard, or I've seen a lot of people just go to a different website and then you would share that website as an application so that people can see that external whiteboard, right? So that you can do that too. But yeah, we provide our default whiteboard. It is a native whiteboard inside of the sharing option. All right, well, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and close this out here. I wish I can answer every question, but unfortunately not enough time, and certainly not, there's no way I would be able to answer every single one. I'm nearing almost 400 questions. So that goes to show you how many people are in this webinar. Dropped, but almost nearing 2,000 people. All right, well, with that being said, thank you so much for your time. I hope that you were able to gain some insight into what Zoom provides as a whole. Please visit us back at zoom.us. If you are interested in more webinars, please visit zoom.us/events and register for a webinar that you find is of interest for you. With that being said, I hope to see you in future sessions. And until then, stay happy, healthy, and positive. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.